Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Coming at you with another review. Now, this is not part of any marathon that I have going on, just kind of a random review. But I came across this movie today for insanely cheap compared to what it normally is, and I could not pass it up. It's a film I've been wanting to see for some time now, and that is From Beyond, 1986. Now, there's a few reasons why I wanted to check this out. One, you have the director and producer team of Stuart Gordon, director, and Brian Usna, producer. It stars Jeffrey Combs, who played Herbert West in Reanimator, which is my sixth favorite film of all time, my second favorite horror protagonist of all time, behind Ash, of course. And it's based on a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, which it really is a short story. It's only 7 pages in this. This is a great collection, by the way. And for some reason, I've only been able to find this on Blu-ray. This is the Scream Factory release, and normally this is $30 or more. Also, there's the Arrow release, which is also $30 or more. But I came across this today for $14, and I was like, fuck yes, definitely. Which, when I got it, it was this cover. Because Scream Factory has these awesome dual covers. But I'm always a fan of original covers, so that's what I went with. Now, the thing about Stuart Gordon and Brian Usna, especially when they do a Lovecraft film, is you can always count on it being one hell of a twisted, nasty, but fun body horror film. Now, I've always credited David Cronenberg as the master of body horror, but Stuart Gordon and Brian Usna, I think their films are more fun for me. They're more of what I'm into, especially when they do a Lovecraft movie. And this did come out the year after Reanimator. That was 85. This was 86. And it's just as fun. Obviously, I don't like it as much as Reanimator, because that is my 6th favorite movie of all time. But From Beyond is still pretty damn good. You also have a Barbara Crampton, who was also in Reanimator, Ken Foray, Ted Sorrell, Carolyn Purdy Gordon. You had the special effects overall was by John Carl Buechler, who is phenomenal. Passed away a couple years ago, within the last couple years, which sucks. But also Mark Shostrom, John Nolan, Anthony Dublin, with additional effects by Mechanical and Makeup Imageries, Inc. And the music was composed by Richard Brand. This has a great score. I do like the Reanimator score because it's essentially the Psycho score, but I really like this one as well. H.P. Lovecraft's, all you have to see is H.P. Lovecraft's, the title, from the creators of Reanimator. And then, obviously having Herbert West as the star, as the good guy, that's also awesome. Now, of course, this is the Blu-ray DVD combo pack, the unrated director's cut, because this was kind of a difficult movie to get an R rating from the MPA. Apparently, their first reaction to the initial cut was 10 times too much of everything. So he had to cut down everything. But just look at this body horror. It's like if you take Reanimator, but mix in, just over-the-top elements of something like Slither, but with better effects. The whole story is Jeffrey Combs, who of course was Herbert West in Reanimator. He plays this scientist, Dr. Crawford Tillinghast. He's working with this guy, Dr. Edward Pretorius, which when I hear that name, I think of Bride of Frankenstein. Of course, he wasn't in Mary Shelley's original story. He was original to the film Bride of Frankenstein. It's possible they were inspired by the Lovecraft story, because even though this From Beyond was written in 1920, the short story anyway, it wasn't published until 1934, the year before Bride of Frankenstein. And of course, kind of like in Bride of Frankenstein, Pretorius he's the main bad guy in this. They developed this machine called the Resonator, which, if you're within range of it, you get to see beyond what normal humans can see or perceive as reality. They want to find a way to expand I thought it was called pineal gland. I guess it's pineal gland. And it just brings out these other creatures and monsters from these other dimensions. But it only works when the machine is on. One such monster gets a hold of Dr. Pretorius, bites his head off, consumes it, and he then, whenever the machine is on afterward, he's the main embodiment of all this stuff. Now, so Crawford is sent to, get a psychiatric help. But Barbara Crampton, who plays Dr. Catherine McMichaels, believes he's telling the truth and wants to get to the bottom of it. Which they are then, okay, that's what I figured. He was a detective. So they decided to go back to the house to recreate the crime scene. But a detective of the case, Bubba Brownlee, played by Ken Foree, they're the trio that we're with up until the third act. And so, they turn the machines on, and Dr. McMichaels, Barbara Crampton, is really infatuated with it. It creates obsession, almost like an addiction. Expanding the pineal gland, where you can become one. You can use your mind to become, one with someone else's mind. It's supposed to become the greatest pleasure, like cosmic pleasure imaginable. And she kind of gets sucked into that. And every time they turn it on, they turn it on the first couple times. Well, first they turn it on, then she turns it on, and from then on, Pretorius is able to turn it on from beyond. And you get all these creature effects. Which I will say, the optical effects, although I like them, they don't hold up as well. Like these little sort of eel things or a jellyfish. It's not CGI. It's an optical effect. I'm not sure how they obtained it. But the practical effects, the practical creature, animatronic, whatever, look great. Like, the jellyfish, once it grabs onto Ken Foree, we see, its tentacles, wrap around his arm, and it bites him, and it's Lovecraftian, so you get really odd looking creatures. Like there's this one giant dune worm looking thing, this giant worm with like a flower opening and all these teeth. And he kind of resembles the Grant monster from Slither. Like at first it's like his head and this part of his torso is all like elongated. And he just becomes this bigger mass of creature as the film goes on. And it's a lot of fun. It is very icky and slimy and gross, but it's a lot of fun. Catherine believes that, you know, the Resonator could be used to... She uses schizophrenia as an example, but I guess mental disorders. Like when Catherine turns it back on, it's because of the pleasure she feels. I was kind of confused about one part, so I'm just looking into that. Eventually, which Ken Foray's death, spoiler alert, I mean, he's attacked by one of the creatures and almost all the meat is taken off his legs and a part of his torso and crazy looking. So Crawford and McMichaels, they go back to the hospital. Since her story was like his in the beginning, they treat her like a mental patient. They're going to give her shock treatment. But the Pretorius had expanded Crawford's pineal gland, so it kind of comes out like an anglerfish, kind of tentacle, and it causes him to want to eat people. Like he bites their eyeball out and like sucks their brains out, and he's lost all his hair. But then during like the final bit, when Pretorius is getting destroyed, we see Crawford, you know, bursting out of him with his hair back. You know, because Catherine goes back to put a bomb near the Resonator, and that's when Pretorius comes back, and that's when we see Crawford trying to burst out of him. And it ends with Barbara Crampton having a mental breakdown, laughing hysterically, saying it ate him. Oh, it's Crawford's consciousness. So when we see Crawford again with hair, it's the consciousness that, you know, he was sharing with him. Because when the pineal gland was coming out, it was Pretorius acting through Crawford. So this was filmed. I was watching the features because this comes with, you know, there's new interviews with Barbara Crampton, Jeffrey Combs, the composer Richard Brand. There's the director's perspective featurette, the Lost and Found featurette of the editing room, storyboard, the film comparisons, and I guess this was filmed in Rome, which, if you know anything about Italian films, especially 60s, 70s, 80s, up until, I'm not sure how recently they continue doing this, if unless they still do, but they don't care about sound when they're making films, because films that are made in Italy or go through Italy get dubbed. So they'll be shooting a scene, they don't care how the lines sound, the crew can talk and make noise, do whatever they want. So they were more or less used to it, so it created quite the distraction. on this set. I guess Jeffrey Combs, he said this was a little out of his comfort zone from what he was used to. He wasn't used to the makeup. He said it has an effect on your psyche when you're essentially like a Quasimodo all day. But I really enjoyed this movie. I mean, even though I like Reanimator a lot more, which isn't saying much because it's one of my all-time favorite films. It's in my top 10. This is up there with the Reanimator sequels. I mean, Beyond Reanimator was okay, but I loved Bride of Reanimator, and I put this up there with it. Stuart Gordon has a great sense of just what looks great on screen as far as effects or humor. Of course, you get the sexual kind of components to this as you do with Reanimator. Where Reanimator, you had the head giving head. With this, you have some sort of allusions to S&M and bondage, but with these kind of Lovecraftian creatures. There is a film, it is on YouTube, but I want to see it on DVD or Blu-ray. It's called Society, which is supposed to be one of the most sickest body horror films. It was directed by Brian Yuzna. So, it's got that sick body horror style to it. And again, even though I love Cronenberg and what he's done, especially for body horror, when you get Yuzna and Gordon working together, you get some really twisted, fun, wild, crazy shit. Especially if they're doing a Lovecraft film. And I highly recommend this. If you like movies like Reanimator or Society, or just real quick, I want to see what else. I know they've done a number of films together, but just Stuart Gordon alone. He also did Dagon. He directed Pit and the Pendulum from 1991. And he did Black Cat, Masters of Horror, 2007. But, he also did Dolls, Castle Freak, which I believe is another a Lovecraft film. The Wonderful Ice Cream. Oh, suit. I thought it said Slut. I was like, what the hell kind of movie is that? But Brian Yuzna, he is also as producer. A lot of, all the Reanimators. Director Brian Yuzna directed Society, Bride of Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead 3, Necronomicon, which is an anthology of Lovecraft, which Jeffrey Combs is also in, I believe. He directed The Dentist, Beyond Reanimator. He also wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which I loved as a kid. H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon. I'm pretty sure it has Jeffrey Combs in it. Yep, it does. But yeah. From Beyond is a really... Damn it. It's a really fun, twisted... You get great effects by John Carl Buechler and company. Reanimator was more blood and gore, kind of zombies, mad scientists. This one is just flat out body horror creature feature. So, if you're a fan of Lovecraft, body horror, or Reanimator, definitely give this a look. I really enjoyed this. But anyway, thank you for watching.